First of all, thank you to the Burkholder family. You guys are great hosts, so appreciative, and thanks for sharing the amazing work that you've done on your farm. Your investments, your technology truly is a reflection. You're a reflection of American agriculture, which is pretty much defined by science, technology, and innovation. And just by talking with you, it's not just the things you've done today, but I get the really obvious. You're looking over the horizon. You're thinking, what's next? What can you do? What you can do next? And that really is, that really is the heart of American agriculture in terms of our productivity, our efficiency, our application of science and technology. We're the best in the world. So we're thrilled to be on here on your family farm. Thank you as well to National Milk and my own personal milkman's here someplace. Paul Bleiber, yeah, good friend, and my friends from Maryland Virginia Co-op that have just been great, great to work with for many years. Thank you to you all for organizing and rounding up the troops together with us today. And I can tell I'm surrounded by some of the best minds in agriculture, and certainly Congressman John Joyce, thank you for hosting us here in your PA 13. Dairy agriculture is our #1 industry in Pennsylvania, and dairies are our biggest commodity, and we're real proud of that fact. As many of you know, we've got a Farm Bill reauthorization on the horizon, September 30th of 2023. This current one expires. We've got a lot of work to do. I am hopeful to hold the gavel. If that happens, from a Pennsylvania perspective, I'll be the first member of Congress to chair the House Agriculture Committee of either party since Edwin Drake discovered oil in the world in 1859. So we're a little overdue, and we want to make sure that the voices of essential America are included. I used to talk all the time about rural America. I have absolutely come to the conclusion that everything that American families need in life that is essential to them in life, it comes off of agriculture operations just like we're at right here at the Burkholder farm. This is essential America, and that's a message we want every American to understand. So no legislation written exclusively within Washington Beltway, where we're just listening to the voices inside the Beltway, is going to work out. It's not going to work out, quite frankly, on any piece of legislation. And I don't think you want us doing legislation just listening to the voices inside that bubble. But it's certainly not going to work out for the American farm family or any family in states for that matter. Now, I've told House Agriculture Committee members that come January, our House Ag Republicans, or what I like to refer to as our farm team, they could probably get rid of their black dress shoes and just wear work boots, because we got to double down to get this farm bill prepared and get it across the line. There are 3 options on the farm bill, and the first one is really is not an option, but it's let it expire. And that's bad news. That's bad news for every American family and every American farm family. Second option is we do an extension. That's failure. That's failure to do our job. The reason we reauthorize every 5 years or so is so that we can improve it. We can identify what's working, what's not working. We can tweak it. And we're living in uncertain times here, where you have record high commodity prices but quite frankly, input prices that are right up against it. And at the end of the day, farming's a business. It's the margin that matters. So there's just a lot of issues that we're struggling with. So so the third option is the only option, and that's we do our job and we get this done. And so I know we're here specifically for a very exciting purpose today, but this is a part of bringing your voices back to Washington to be a part of that next farm bill as well. We've got a lot of issues to cover, and it's critical that we hit the ground running. That's why Leader McCarthy created the Energy, Climate, and Conservation Task Force, led by our great friend here, Chairman Garrett Graves from Southeast Louisiana. And so we can offer common sense policies, engage in solutions-based discussions with key stakeholders like yourselves. I also commend Leader McCarthy for elevating agriculture so prominently in this process. And Kevin McCarthy's been a friend of mine since I first ran. He was elected the cycle before me. one of the first people from Washington I ever got a phone call when I was running. And the more I learned about it, my wife's cousin lives in Bakersfield, so I knew a little bit about his district, and quite frankly, it's agriculture and energy, which reminds me a lot of Pennsylvania. So a lot of things in common. So really proud of him and the work he's doing as leader, and quite frankly, next Speaker of the House. And this project that he's done with the Commitment to America, where he's given us really pointed in the right direction, given us marching orders, and breaking into 7 different pillars. And today we're here to talk about energy, climate, and conservation. That pillar. This is about preparing to govern, so that when we win, when we take back the majority, and when we populate our committees, all of our committees, whether it's energy and commerce, we have so many committees that are represented in the members that are here. When those committees are populated at the beginning of January, we're ready to go to work. And we've got solutions that have been field tested, we'll just say that, farm tested, and that's part of being here today. One particular focus of this task force is conservation with a purpose, and that's why we're here today. You've witnessed that with Clint's tour, the conservation programs out there that we witnessed and looked at, whether they came from the state or the Farm Bill, EQIP, the separators, and we're going to hear more about that as we go along today. The American farmer really is the most efficient and productive in the world, having increased farm output nearly 3 times since the 1940s with little to no change in inputs. We've increased somewhere under 300% since the 1940s, our productivity. We intend to give us an opportunity to be in the majority, and we're going to take that to 400% by the year 2035. And I think we're in a good place to do that. This outstanding progress is driven by advancements in science and technology innovation, all words I use to define agriculture, and frankly, how I would define the Berkeley farm. The purpose of this task force and our visit here today is to champion the great conservation work the American farmer, rancher, and forester are already carrying out, while also ensuring that we equip our farm economy with the tools that they need to increase production in a time of record inflation, high input costs, geopolitical unrest, as we all are sadly aware of, and an impending global food crisis, where we're going to see in many parts of the world, specifically I would say probably starting in the Middle East, in the African continent, we're going to see massive hunger, starvation, and death by famine, perhaps of a biblical portion, just because of all the things that have happened right now. So it's time for government to get out of the way so that our producers, like this gentleman, can do what they do best, unleash the American production of food, fuel, and fiber. And our members here today recognize that. And I always urge my members on both sides of the aisle to follow these 4 principles when it comes to climate policy. Number 1, whatever actions government takes when it comes to climate, it should be American farmers, ranchers, and forest families. Those families should benefit primarily and right up front when it comes to climate policy. It must primarily benefit those producers, and specifically those taking care of our greatest carbon sink, our lands, and that's the American farmer, rancher, and landowner. Number 2, you can't have a healthier environment without a healthier economy. If you try to push one over the other, it crashes and fails. And that's why, although it's never going to happen, that new Green Deal would become law. It'd burn and crash in maybe 3 to 6 months, because it would just wreck the American economy and it'd be abandoned. Number 3, it has to be based on science and not political science. As I like to say, science according to God's law. And number 4, 4th principle, let's start with what we know works, and that's the Farm Bill programs that are out there, our conservation programs, our investments in our land-grant universities, and our research. There's many parts of the Farm Bill, many different titles, even beyond the conservation title, that provide great tools for farmers like the one I had the privilege of sitting next to. So proud to be here with Ranking Member Graves, and he and I today, and I'll let themselves introduce shortly who they are. And now, well, for introductions, let's start with the chairman. Chairman Graves, thanks for your leadership with this task force. The barn is yours.
All right. Good deal. Well, hey, Garrett Graves from South Louisiana. Again, I want to thank y'all for hosting us and thank all of you for being here today. We can't just wish that things happen in terms of meeting global food surges that are predicted to happen. We can't just wish that our energy demands are going to be met without an actual strategy behind it. And I want to talk about energy for just a minute because it's one of the things that's affecting, I think, all of us probably the most right now, and I know it's what I hear at home more than anything else. You can look at what the Biden administration's saying and many other organizations, and they talk about how there's going to be a 50% growth in global energy demand over the next 28 years, 50%. And when you don't have a strategy, you see some of the implications that we're seeing today, where it's been a near doubling of gasoline prices, diesel's even higher than that, natural gas prices nearly tripling. And these are costs you can't avoid. If you drive a car, if you eat, if you ride on transit, no matter what you do, you're going to pay these costs. If you order things online, you're going to pay these costs somehow. If you pay an electricity bill, you're going to pay these costs. And it's one of the most pervasive, one of the most impactful things that's happening right now, because we're saying we're not going to produce energy in the United States. We're not going to produce new energy. Yet our president's in Saudi Arabia right now asking them to meet our energy needs, which I'll make note, it's actually dirtier energy from an emissions perspective as well. So it's failing the affordability test, this strategy. It's failing the test of environmental, the environmental or the emissions. It's failing the test of energy security because we can't go to countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Venezuela and ask them to meet our energy demands, our energy needs. And something else that's really important is just this whole supply chain security issue. We saw what happens when you go and increase your dependence upon Russian energy. We saw what happens. And we can't trade from Russia to Iran to Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, China. We can't do that. And similarly in the agriculture space, it's predicted that we're going to have a 50% increase in demand for food between now and 2050. Excuse me, 56% increase in demand for food. And as GT said, you know who does it better than anywhere else in the world? Y'all do. We do it right here at home. We produce it more efficiently, and as GT mentioned, 300% improvement in efficiency since the 1940s. And looking a little bit closer time frame, just between 1990 and 2020, we saw so much increase in production that it would take 100 million acres in 1990 efficiency to produce the amount of outputs, agriculture outputs that we're seeing today. And on the environmental side, we've seen that the ag sector is sequestering about 13% of the emissions in the United States. So look, y'all are the original conservationists. Some of the best opportunities we have in America to further sequester greenhouse gases, to meet both this economic sustainable goal and this environmental sustainable goal is in the resources that y'all manage. So GT talked about this pillar that we're working on today. It's conservation with a purpose. It's not out there doing things that make us feel good that have awful outcomes. It's about doing things that where you get the win-wins or the win-win-wins, increasing agricultural outputs, improving our conservation measures or sequestration of greenhouse gases, improving efficiency, and it's ensuring economic activity and sustainability. Look, in closing, I want to make note of something that's so important. It's so important. When you produce natural resources, whether it's agricultural products or it's oil and gas, you are creating new economic activity. You're taking things out of the ground and you're creating new economic activity. When you're dependent upon other countries, we're taking our limited resources, our monetary resources, and we're sending it to them. And if we can produce things in the United States, if we can meet this surge in agricultural products or food, if we can meet this growth in energy demand by producing resources right here in America, let's do it. And so we're gonna take the handcuffs off as a result of this task force work that we're doing now. We're going to take the handcuffs off of the farms. We're going to take the handcuffs off of the people who just want to work hard in America and make sure that we can meet that demand both from an economic sustainable and from an environmentally sustainable perspective. So, John, thanks again for hosting us in your great district. And I do want to apologize. I am going to have to take off a little early. I got to try and catch the last flight home to New Orleans. So, but thanks
Thank you for
again.
being here.
Yeah.
Let me take the opportunity to introduce our host member of Congress here today from Pennsylvania 13, who I know his passion for agriculture and being a voice and a vote for his farmers. In the dairy, there's a lot of things we're trying to work on the dairy side, and the labeling law is a very important part of that. There's a lot of folks that, and I have nothing against almond growers. I love my almond grower farmers I've gotten to be friends with. I've just never figured out where to squeeze it to get the milk out. and so we got a labeling issue here that we don't want consumers to be misled, obviously, to truth in labeling. And the member of Congress that has carried the milk on that, we'll put it that way, for many years is Congressman John Joyce with his legislation. And John, thanks for, I'll yield to you.
Absolutely. And yeah, we understand you have a flight to catch. And GT, thank you for having me participate as well. To the entire Burkholder family, what an operation. In our district, I realize as your representative in Washington how hard your family works. I realize the constraints that you work under. But my takeaway from seeing your operation here is you reach for innovation. And that's what the dairy farmers, that's what all of ag in Pennsylvania reaches for. They reach for innovation. I serve on Energy and Commerce. I didn't make GT's ag team, but I'm really proud to be on Energy and Commerce. And realize how important the energy resources that are under the feet of my constituents are. The natural gas, the coal, the Marcellus Shale. And Biden lived up to one promise. He said on day one, I'm going to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. And we're all paying for it. You're paying for it in ag. You know that when you talk to me about the increased prices and the logistics of moving equipment, moving grain, moving feed to this great dairy farm. I'm an all of the above guy, but above all, I'm for the natural resources that are under the feet of Pennsylvania 13 residents. And I will continue to advocate for that. I'm someone who loves being outside. I plant my garden, I'm out in the woods, and I respect the environment. There's no question about that. Dairy farmers respect the environment. I see that. I see all what you do here and understand your commitment to doing it in the cleanest and the safest way. But we have to be able to do that on all levels. And my commitment for you is that I will continue from the energy and commerce point of view to protect that we have American, clean, cost-effective natural gas, that we have the ability to utilize what's under our feet, what employs people, and what can make your prices less here. GT has mentioned something, and if you're part of the Pennsylvania delegation and GT is our dean, you realize very early how important dairy is. I realize that when I come to the farms. I see patients here. How are you today? I see different friends here as well. And I've known that from the hardworking dairy farmers that are part of this district. But when Michelle Obama removed milk from schools, look, I had chocolate milk, like I have today, from kindergarten through 12th grade. Milk, whole milk, allows for bone, brain, and muscle development. It's what kids need. Childhood obesity is a real issue in America right now, and it's from kids sitting in front of video games. It is not from kids drinking whole milk. They need this. I'll tell you this as a doctor. I'll provide for you studies that support this. We need to get whole milk back into school. And I'll end with what GT alluded to because we've worked on this together. We need labeling that dairy products need to come from lactating animals. I agree with you. I don't know how almonds can produce milk. I don't know how soy can produce milk. I think that milk
Great
comes from...
beverages, they're just
I do feel beat up on here. You're on a dairy farm.
Well, we only have a little bit of almonds. I feel like almond. Well, yeah, there's.
Yeah, go easy there. Just realize your audience. But the takeaway message is we have a commitment, and there are 5 of us here from Washington. Our commitment is to work for you so that your ability to innovate and to provide the healthy sources of food can be spread throughout Pennsylvania, throughout the entire country. I thank you, GT, thank you for organizing and including me in this as well. And I'll turn it over to you, David.
There we go. We have a gentleman here from California. He's been a great friend. He knows dairy. His family are dairy farmers. His immediate family, his cousins.
Me.
Well, that's what. Yeah.
I still log on Dairy Comp from DC and make a list for the guys to move heifers.
There you go. So California 21st Congressional District, David Valadeo.
GT, thanks for the opportunity, John. Thanks for inviting me. I actually came to this way last week to see Pennsylvania. I wanted to see Gettysburg with my family. This is absolutely beautiful country. And both the members, John and Garrett, thanks for being a part of this as well. So I filled the shots of the almond thing. I was going to joke a little bit because almond milk doesn't even really have a whole lot of almonds. We grow a little bit of almonds on our family's farm, but I remember asking a couple of the almond guys, I said, all right, how many almonds in a gallon of milk? Give me the truth here, I want to know. And he laughed, he goes, only like 3 or 4. Like we grind them, we soak them, whatever. And I've supported the Dairy Pride Act, I've helped on the amendments and so I've full support. I'm glad to have a doctor leading that fight to make a great case for us. But the importance of the Farm Bill though. I come from California, and I mentioned a little bit on the tour. Over the years, when I would go to Land O'Lakes and different dairy groups, National Milk, and come as a young producer to and meet with other farmers across the country, there's always a lot of fighting. But when it comes to the Farm Bill and Washington, D.C., we can't be fighting with each other. And we can't let our regional battles get into the middle of these things. There's things that help all of us. And I know California's dairy is a little bit different than the rest of the country. I feel like we've been forced into a lot of it. A lot of the environmental regulations, a lot of the laws that we have to live under have forced a lot of consolidation over the years. And I think overall that's been bad for the industry. I don't think there's anything more beautiful than driving around the countryside and seeing all the different farms and people living in a free nation deciding how big of a farm they want to farm and how many cows or acres they want to take care of. And I think that's what we should strive for. And when we draft this types of bills, in the Farm Bill, we have to make sure that our legislation is something that works for everyone across America. And my staff, when I said I wanted to come to Pennsylvania and tour dairy with GT, they laughed and said, you live on a dairy. Why do you want to go see another dairy? And I thought it was important for me to see dairies across the country and see the differences. And there's a lot of areas where we can work together to make sure that whatever policy that comes from that. And I don't sit on the farm team. I'm not on the Ag Committee, but I sit on the Appropriations Committee and I'm on the Ag Subcommittee. And so they set the policy, we fund the policy. And making sure that both of us work together to make sure that those policies are good for everyone. And bringing Garrett here to be a part of the energy front. And I know we've always made money from selling milk, but sadly, energy is something that we're going to have to start looking for to help some of our farms survive. And it's becoming a revenue source. It's something that gives us a lot of benefit on other fronts, and it's something that we need to also be part of the conversation on. And so I look forward to this conversation and future conversations, and I'm just grateful to be able to be here and learn more about different agriculture across the country so I can be a good partner instead of looking to just fight across the country. So thank you.
David, thank you. And then we're really honored and pleased to be joined by another good friend, a gentleman from Tennessee's 6th Congressional District, Congressman John Rose, former Agriculture Commissioner in Tennessee, and a great friend of the Agriculture Committee. He'd be great as a member of that committee, and a great task force supporter as well. And so, John, thanks for being here, and I'll yield to you.
Thank you, GT. It's a privilege to be here, and Dr. Joyce, thank you for hosting us, and it's a privilege to be here with the other members of Congress. I hail from the kind of the northeastern part of Middle Tennessee, just north and east of Nashville, and I grew up on our 8th generation farm. It goes back to 1790. So a proud heritage, continues to be a working farm. We were in the dairy business for about 50 years, as me and Mr. Bryant discussed, sold through Dairymen Incorporated as our as our local dairy co-op. And I've got 2 young sons. I tell them all the time they're too young to fully appreciate the pressure they're under, but you know, a 232-year legacy, unbroken streak, you know, so hoping one of them might decide to take that up. People ask me all the time if I still farm, and GT, what I tell them is I farm as much as I can afford, and any farmer will understand that. I did get the chance to serve as Commissioner of Agriculture in Tennessee back a couple of decades ago as a very young man, and gained a keener appreciation for you know, government's interface with agriculture. Certainly already knew that from being a farmer growing up in a farm family. I serve on the Financial Services Committee, and as GT knows, deeply interested in agricultural issues and working hard to be a part of the solution. My family has deep ties to the Farm Bureau in Tennessee, and so it's kind of in my bloodstream to be interested in agriculture. Trained as an agricultural economist years ago, and then took a different route so I could afford to farm. And so good to be here. In my role on financial services, one of the recent efforts that I led with the help of GT and others was to try to push back against the Security and Exchange Commission's disastrous rule proposal via with regard to climate change, and particularly the Scope 3 greenhouse gas disclosure element of that law. And maybe I think a lot of farmers are probably not really tuned into that yet, but if that becomes a rule, if that rule becomes law and is implemented, every farmer across the country is going to find themselves under yet another burden from the federal government to count their greenhouse gas emissions, and no one really understands exactly how that would unfold. But we've got a lot of work to do to push back against the disastrous policies that this administration and this majority in Congress has put in place. So we've got our work cut out for us. GT is right, in the next Congress, and hopefully he will have the gavel and we will have control of Congress so that we can more effectively push back against the disastrous policies that the Biden administration has been advancing. Thank you for letting me be here.
John, thanks for joining us. Now I want to turn over to Mr. Burkholder, Clint, to offer a brief overview of his farm operation and conservation practices for those who were not present on the farm tour, and those that will be watching in here on social media. So, Clint,
Okay.
thanks so much.
Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to the farm. I always enjoy the opportunity to take people around. I could spend all day. And took a while for the tour. It was supposed to be a half-hour tour, I think, but we stretched it a little longer. But no, welcome everybody. I am third generation here on the farm. My grandfather got started here. He farmed on the half back in the 50s and had the opportunity in the 60s to buy the farm. So that's how we ended up here. And then my dad and him formed a partnership in the 70s, and Dad eventually took over and bought the farm in the 80s. And it seems like every 10 years something happens. I transitioned home from college and started working on the farm. And in 2007, my wife and I joined my parents in a joint venture, very similar to a partnership. And then in 2020, the end of 2020, I bought the rest of the joint venture from my parents. Dad is now, he's not retired. I don't think you ever retire, but he's just no longer financially responsible. That's what we like to say. So I enjoy dairy. It's been a great ride. It's been a great business for the family and for us. On the tour, we did get to see many different things that we have taken advantage of. Some of those EQIP program is something that we utilize. We had 3 different manure storages constructed on the farm through that program, cost share program. There was a heifer facility that had another more of a county funding program that was very beneficial, helped us consolidate the animals and be more efficient here on the farm with what we were able to do with having the animals up the road at different smaller groups. Now we can bring them. They're still in different groups, but it's just all in one place here on the farm. So we really appreciate the ability to be able to take advantage of those programs and the funding that comes through, whether it's state, county, or greater, whatever that looks like. The REAP program, somebody told me what the REAP program stood for. I can't remember right now. That's a tax incentive. You get tax credits, and you can either use them or sell them if you don't have a tax liability. That has been done here on the farm for some no-till equipment that we have purchased and gotten tax credits for going through that program. Something we're working with Maryland, Virginia, Lindsey, the RCPP program is something we're
Farm Bill
hoping
program.
that's, Farm Bill. So we're hoping to see some funding through that. We're going down that road and exploring that opportunity. So hopefully that comes to fruition and can allow us to do better management, more efficiencies on the farm. That's what it's all about, our efficiencies and trying to do a better job with what we have. Not always growing bigger, but just doing a better job, being more efficient with what we're producing.
Very good. Well, Clint, once again, thank you very much. And, the programs, whether they're, administered on a local, county, state, or federal level, those are all tools. I mean, we take great pride with what we do with the Farm Bill. Those conservation programs are tools to just help you be more effective. In the end, to help you to be more successful with a healthier economy and, quite frankly, a healthier environment. And those are important tools. The theme today is conservation with a purpose, and it's a dual purpose, economic and environment. And as I said, from a principal perspective, you can't have one without the other. We are blessed to be joined by a lot of key stakeholders here. Agriculture, it doesn't matter what kind of an agriculture, what kind of a farm or a ranch or a forestry operation you're running, it's those hands that you have that make it successful, right? And when it comes to the work that we're doing with this task force, you're all part of the farm team when it comes to this particular task force. And so looking forward now to having each of you introduce yourself and whatever remarks that you'd like to make and share with us. And I will pass this microphone your way.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jay Bryant. I'm the CEO of Maryland and Virginia Milk Producers. I don't have a Maryland or Northern Virginia accent, as you might can tell. I grew up on a small dairy farm in northwest North Carolina, so my representative back home is Virginia Fox, and so she and my mother and my sister have always been very close. So that's a part of the area that I hail from. But again, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Clint's father, Stanley, was on the board when I came to Maryland, Virginia 23 years ago. So I've gotten a great opportunity to get to know Clint's family, his mom and dad, Stan and Janice, and just very good people to work with, and really great advocates and a great face for our industry. Several years ago, we really started trying to think about how can we as a co-op do things for our members to bring resources to bear that were outside of the normal governmental opportunities and resources, because we were forevermore getting in front of our customers, and they would ask us questions about conservation and sustainability and climate, and how do your members feel about that? How do they think about that? Do they think about the future, and do they think about the environment? And obviously, I loved your opening comments there, Congressman Graves, because my answer would always be, I think dairy farmers and farmers in general are the original environmentalist and the original conservationist. Because if they didn't take care of the resources that they basically had as assets, then they weren't going to be there. And they had to do that. And so one conversation led to the next, and it just seemed like there was a place and an opportunity for us to bring together our customers and the marketplace, if you will, with our members and start trying to put some programs together to help support that process and to help support them. And really, we've been really pleased with some of the things we've been able to get done. I'm going to ask Lindsey Reeves, who works with us, to give you an example of a couple of those. As y'all would imagine, I could sit here and pontificate for quite a while on all the things Lindsey does, but Lindsey will do a much better job talking about what Lindsey's done than I will, and she has spearheaded that effort on behalf of our cooperative, and it's really done a lot to help our members continue to access funds and access opportunities that are out there because the consumer, the marketplace wants to support farmers, but they want to support farmers doing things the right way. And I think that's just a great opportunity for us, and I saw it as that a few years ago, and Lindsey's helped us bring that to the table. So I'll turn it over to you, Lindsey.
Thanks,
Yes,
Jay.
sir.
Lindsey Reeves. I work with Maryland and Virginia Milk Producers Co-op, which Clint and his family are proud members of for a number of years. And I grew up on a dairy farm in Virginia in Loudoun County. And Congressman Rose, I was the 10th generation on my family's farm. So we have a strong history in agriculture, and I'm excited to continue to work in this industry and work on behalf of our member owners. But like Jay said, one of our goals is to really bring value back to our member owners, and we see a lot of the challenges. We see a lot of the needs from our end consumer, from our customers, and from what people are expecting at the farm level. And we looked at how can we partner with a group that aligns with what we do but can bring a different perspective. And we partnered with the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, who's with us here today. They're a boots-on-the-ground conservation group, and they had the access to a lot of the federal dollars that you all allocate money for. But as a for-profit cooperative, we didn't have access to those dollars. And Clint, on his farm, he's busy farming every day. He doesn't have time to figure out, what do I qualify? How can I get this? So we created a public-private partnership with one of our customers that enabled us to access a lot of those dollars through the Alliance nonprofit status and get them directly to our members. And through the partnership that we developed, we were able to accelerate the adoption of conservation practices. So a lot of times, as Clint can attest to, you put your name on a list at the County Soil and Water Conservation District, and then you wait and see if funding's there. And it may be you need to wait until the next farm bill's passed because you've reached your limit. And so they're busy farming, they're busy continuing to invest, and those dollars are sitting there unused. So through our partnership, we've been able to bring $19 million directly to our member farms. And what we do as the Milk Co-op is we bring that trusted relationship with our farmers. So Jenna and her team at the Alliance, they have the dollars, they're a conservation group, but they don't know the burk holders. And so in order for them to get the dollars on the ground, they have to spend years trying to establish relationships and make inroads. And by us working together with my sustainability team, her technical expertise at the environmental level, and working with our member owners, we're able to get those projects on the ground fast. And right now we have a wait list of over 300 farmers that are ready to implement climate-smart commodity practices at the farm level. And these practices aren't just practices for the sake of practices. As you all know, with small businesses, there has to be that economic return, and that's what these practices do. It's conservation with a purpose that's going to ensure that that farm can continue to grow, can continue to transfer on to the next generation, and also improve their local community. It's critical for us in dairy to keep consumers' trust and to operate the right way. And through Farm Bill programs, such as the RCPP, through EQIP and others, we're able to make those investments to continue to produce that whole milk that we know the youth of our America needs so they can be strong in that next generation. So we really appreciate the investment that's been made. We're hoping everyone gets to work and gets that next Farm Bill passed so we can access those dollars. And a critical component of those dollars is ensuring they're flexible. and ensuring that partnerships like the one that we formed can continue to access them. And one way we've been able to do that is through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Those dollars have been extremely flexible, and we're able to get them on the ground quickly. So we appreciate the support of those programs. And Congressman Thompson, if you're okay, I'll just pass it down to Jenna. Yep.
Thank you. All right, how's this thing work? I just talk right into it. Perfect. Alrighty. Well, it's an honor and privilege to be here. My name is Jenna Beckett. I'm the Pennsylvania State Director and Ag Program Director at the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. And our mission is to work with communities, companies, and conservationists to restore the lands and waters that flow into the Chesapeake Bay. And over the past 5 years, we have just had the tremendous honor of our partnership with Maryland, Virginia Milk Producers Cooperative Association. I could go on and on and on, just like Jay could, about how amazing Lindsey is and how much of a privilege it's been to work with her team. We've got Janae over here who leads their sustainability team. Mike, we've worked with, to get things started. And the partnership that we have as an environmental organization just gives me goosebumps. We have access, as Lindsey said, to hundreds of farmers who we can immediately walk onto the farm with, and we have that trust because they have a decades-long relationship with Maryland, Virginia. So, prior to this partnership model, we were working with, Mr. Saltzfuss, who we hoped would connect us to his cousin, who we hoped would connect us to his neighbor. It was very much one relationship at a time. So now having this pipeline, the efficiency is just incredible. We rely heavily on Farm Bill programs. So right now, the RCPP that we're hoping to hear back from any day now, really, to get Clint some more help, that's a $4 million RCPP Regional Conservation Partnership Program that the Alliance sought after through, it's a USDA Farm Bill program. We access a lot of EQIP, hundreds of thousands of EQIP dollars in that $19 million total that Lindsey shared. And our ask, in addition to just increasing, getting as much funding into the Farm Bill as we can for our farmers, as Lindsey said, is to make it as flexible as possible. I would love for my team to spend every hour that we can out on farm instead of reporting for grant funds, reporting, just moving things forward on the ground rather than doing paperwork. And additionally, I think we all know that we're in such an interesting time right now as far as the intersection of climate goals, water quality goals, energy goals, et cetera, and it's just fascinating how much we still don't know. We've got companies, customers of Maryland, Virginia, making extreme goals as far as what they want to hit for their science-based targets. And the reality is that we don't actually know how to get there with especially with our plain-sect farmers. Here in this region, I'm from Lancaster County, 80% of our farmers are plain-sect, and the same type of technology that might be working in California is not going to work on an Amish farm. And we literally are trying our best to figure out what to do and do not know what to do. And so any work that you all can put into really figuring out what technologies make sense for our small farmers, we want our small farmers to remain competitive. We don't want to lose our Amish farmers, but we need to figure out what technologies work for water quality, work for GHG, and work for them, keep them, conservation with a purpose. I love that, Congressman Thompson, GT. I really, really appreciate that. And then additionally, there is really no single tool right now that we can use to model and calculate the impact that we're going to get. If we want to go to a Maryland, Virginia customer and say, all right, this is all the work that we did on these 50 farms, and this is how many metric tons of GHG you're going to get out of it, there's literally not one tool that can do that for us. We have spent days and days doing literature reviews, so any work that you can do to figure out how we do this effectively would just make our lives that much easier, and we would have that much more time to just get out on farm and help the wonderful families like Mr. Burkholder that we've been able to do through our partnership. So thank you.
Jenna, before you move on, you talk about, because we talked briefly, I think, in Wagon Ride, we got some farmers that aren't real comfortable dealing directly with the government and government programs. And that alliance, that interface, you want to talk briefly about how you've been able to help some of those farms out and make farmers feel really more comfortable of being able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, I'm from Lancaster County. A lot of our farmers are Amish, are plain-sect, who are a little bit more fearful of engaging with the public sector, conservation districts, our state has created great programs for our farmers, but there's just a hesitancy there to engage with the government. And so us as a nonprofit, we're able to step in, access public dollars, and then work alongside Maryland, Virginia, who has that trusted relationship, to pay actually the contractors directly, which is huge. I mean, if there was a way that through RCPP or any of the Farm Bill programs that we could access dollars and pay contractors directly rather than the way that it functions now, which is it's a reimbursement. The farmer has to upfront the cost and then wait until the project's in the ground and then get the payment. That is I think that's our secret weapon, is being able to pay contractors directly. And it's still, we make sure that these practices are everything that they need to be, that they're verified, that they're engineered correctly, but the ability to pass the money through the nonprofit directly to the contractor rather than passing through the farmer has been really, really significant. So thank you for bringing that up, GT.
Thank you. Matthew, it's all yours. Introduce yourself and whatever you'd like to share. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So my name is Matt Brake. I'm a local dairy farmer from Mercersburg, just about 20 miles down the road. Also sit on our County Farm Bureau Board of Directors. But at our farm, we milk 120 cows, farm 400 acres. And just within the last, I'd say 3 to 5 years, my dad and myself have started cutting our teeth a little bit in some of these conservation programs that are available. Primarily the REAP program, and then also we're getting ready to do some cover crop work. Something unique about our operation, though, you talk about efficiencies and innovations in agriculture. We are a pretty much fully robotic dairy operation, so the milking, manure scraping, and feeding of our cows is all done via robots, which has really kind of taken us into a 21st century dairy, and being able to utilize that has really kind of helped us get a leg up on some other aspects of farming. But so yeah, from cover crops, we were just rebuilt a barn after a barn fire back in 2019, and we use a compost bedded pack facility too, which is considered a form of manure storage, a good conservation practice, and are able to take care of the REAP tax credit program as well. So programs like that have definitely helped us out, and I'm really encouraged to hear about the partnership. I'm also a Maryland and Virginia producer, so excited to reach out to Lindsey and work with her and Jenna and some of the other programs available to us.
Matthew, I think I got David to come visit the farm with me the next time we come up.
Yeah, more than happy to open up the farm. We love showing off the robots. The cows love putting on a good show as well. So yeah, by all means, we can.
How many times does a cow get milked on average at your farm?
So on average at our farm, we're right around 2.7 to 2.8. Our higher producers, our fresh cows, are actually getting closer to that 4 or 5, some even 6 times a day. So.
Well, they say 3 times a day is hard on the cow. When a cow has a choice, they do it anyway.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Cows
Some
love
of
the
them
robots.
are a little addicted to that sweet feed that baits them in, too.
They are. I have a cow. She does a couple laps. The one day she had 35 refusals. So 35 refusals and 5 milkings. So
I need to put that technology on my refrigerator. I'd be much better to lock the door when I walk up to it.
yeah.
There's some money to be made there. All right. Now we got the gentleman from Robosomia. David, go ahead and introduce yourself and whatever you'd like to share.
Good evening. My name is David Poole. With my wife and my 2 daughters, we milk 180 cows in Robosonia, Pennsylvania. That's in Berks County. Been Maryland, Virginia members for 12 years or something like that.
Is that all?
You had your chance, Jay. Yeah. There's a lot of topics we can discuss tonight. As far as the things that I see important moving forward as a 4th generation dairyman and how things have changed, we as farmers basically control the resources that it takes to fix the problems. We just got to be let do it. And bureaucracy gets in the way of us doing what we do best. And the amazing thing about it is we already do the things that it takes to fix the climate, to keep the water clean. We don't get the credit for it. And 2 gentlemen over here made a comment about dairy farming to the amount that you make. I think it was the comment that you made about whatever you could afford. We run $1 million businesses, and there's times when we can't cash flow things. And we're looking for alternative sources of revenue. And usually what ends up happening is it becomes a mandate that we have to do, and we never see the revenue. So if you can do anything in Washington, help us facilitate the opportunity to profit from what we do, so that my children and every other dairyman's children that want the opportunity to produce agricultural products in this country have that opportunity, because you can afford to make a living farming. So, you know, it's a balancing act that we have to do, we have to navigate, but take the complicity out of it and go back to the things that actually work. You know, government sometimes gets in the way of things that matter.
Right.
And, you know, something like cover crop was mentioned. That's been one of the most valuable tools that me as a dairyman have used, because if you protect Mother Nature, she will take care of you.
Yeah.
And there's all this government money out there to do this project, that project. I feel the largest impact that government can have is if you want to put revenue in an agriculture producer's hands, paying to plant cover crop. Because if you keep your soil where it belongs, then the people from Chesapeake Bay don't have to complain about all the nutrients going in. And if it comes from Washington, it's not a regional program. The Chesapeake Bay is doing wonderful things, but I'm not in the Chesapeake, so I can't reap those benefits. So if it comes as a part of the Farm Bill, then the people in California can access the funds for doing what they do,
Yeah.
as well as Pennsylvania or Michigan or Louisiana or wherever. So let's not box ourselves in.
Right.
So,
David, thank you. And excellent point. The Chesapeake Bay program actually was a Farm Bill program. And I give a lot of credit to a former member, Tim Holden, who, because it was, when I got on 14 years ago, got on the Ag Committee, it's pretty remarkable that those of us in the Chesapeake Bay, and there are so many watersheds, right? I mean, my congressional district, I'm in the Gulf of Mexico, Chesapeake Bay, Lake Erie, because it's so large. But Chesapeake Bay, those of us in Chesapeake Bay, I mean, we had the only program for many years. And then I think the 2014 Farm Bill, we knew it was going to catch up with us, right? And that's where the RCPP came in. So it's now available to David and to John and the different parts in the country. And I think the other part that's so important to reflect on with your statement too is what works is locally led voluntary conservation. And I'll just make a reference on cover crops. Cover crops are great, but I have been in farm areas in my travels as a ranking member, specifically in Texas, where if you put a cover crop in, it's going to suck every bit of moisture out of the ground, and your primary crop is not going to grow. So that's where you need the flexibility. And the Biden administration was talking about mandating that, cover cropping and as opposed to the way you talked about it. And that's the way we tried to do it. And that's what this task force is pushing in terms of conservation with a solution is voluntary, locally led. So, but David, thank you. Bernie Morrissey would be proud of your presentation. Yeah, pass that one down, please.
You mind if I pass it on? Rather just pass this along. I'm Leonard Kresge, and I'm a dairy producer in Pennsylvania, about an hour north of here. I guess I'd like to say is the Dairy Margin Protection Program and the Revenue Protection Programs are good forms of legislation that helped us. Thank you for that.
Well, Leonard, thank you. The dairy protection program we did back in 2014 Farm Bill, quite frankly, the Agriculture Committee got it right. And then we had some folks that got their hands on it and kind of twisted the numbers to fit into some financial.
It's a disaster.
Oh, yeah, they messed it up. Where it wasn't affordable, nor was it really helpful. But I'm proud to say in the 2018 Farm Bill, you know, our fellow, the folks that did that learned their lesson and they left their hands off of what today we know is the dairy margin coverage. And I do, at least what I find almost without exception is that it's been a real godsend and a blessing for dairy farmers, especially coming through COVID in that period of time. And I knew it was good when I got calls from dairy farmers that didn't sign up for it. And in the middle of COVID, they wanted to sign up for it, and it's like, that's not the way insurance works. You know, you can't buy the insurance after your house burns down. You know, you got to take the risk, right? You're managing risk. And so thank you for the comments on the dairy margin. I also think going into this next Farm Bill that, I mean, we were really lucky that we chose to go the direction of margin. And I'll just make reference to those that grow your own crops. The Title I program, which is based on reference prices, that's not real meaningful right now because you're getting record high commodity prices, but your input costs are where you may be upside down. And in fact, we don't grow rice in our part of the country. A lot of rice in California.
Northern part.
You got some rice in Tennessee. You got to go down to Arkansas for that, I guess. Well, rice is upside down because the rice isn't getting the commodity prices, but their input costs are up. So, I mean, I think there's a lesson as we move forward with the Farm Bill to maybe reconsider Title I, and I'm not saying that's the right or the wrong way to go, but we ought at least be talking about, because the dairy margin coverage has been so successful when we insure, and it's a public-private partnership, you purchase that insurance. That maybe on Title I we need to be rethinking it. And I know that's changing a paradigm is like, it's like this, well, I guess it's appropriate on dairy farm to say that's the holy cow, right? But
It's nice that we pay at the end of when it closes out.
yeah,
That makes it the best part for us.
yeah, absolutely.
Makes it affordable.
Thank you. Jane?
Good evening. I'm Jane Seabright. I'm with the Center for Dairy Excellence. Center for Dairy Excellence is actually a public-private partnership in Pennsylvania supporting the broad dairy industry in Pennsylvania's 5,200 dairy farms. I grew up on a dairy farm. And I live on a dairy farm. Actually, we're predominantly crop farm, but we're still small on both sides. We have 50 cows and 700 acres. We've actually benefited from a number of the NRCS programs. We use the precision, nitrogen variable rate program to support some of the things we've done with GPS positioning in our crop business, and it's been very beneficial. And what I would say about dairy is when you develop programs through the Farm Bill to encourage farms to adopt climate-smart programs, the public-private partnership is really essential. Number one, in Pennsylvania, predominantly, a lot of our farms are Amish and are plain sect, they're Mennonite, they're Brethren, and they don't readily accept government programs. So the DMC program has been excellent. We struggle to get farms in Pennsylvania to sign up for it just because they think that they're taking a government handout. So if we can find ways to get them to adopt these programs that are so valuable to their businesses and to use them on their farms, I think that would be incredibly beneficial. Another program that has been very valuable is dairy revenue protection. It's a great program, hasn't been readily used. So when we look at climate smart programs, we need to make sure they're public-private partnerships. We also need to echo what Jenna said to understand where we are. As a dairy industry, we talk a lot about net zero, and my frustration with net zero is nobody can tell me where we are right now. So how can you talk about getting to net zero when you don't know where we are right now? We're not properly documenting the great practices that are happening on Dave's farm, on Clit's farm, on all these farms. We really need to find out where we are now so we understand where we need to be. And especially in Pennsylvania, where we have incredibly diversified businesses. We have small, large, value-added operations, organic operations, conventional operations. There's no one way to measure what these farms are doing, and we just really need to have good monitoring tools, good models in place to document where we are so we know where we need to go.
Well, Jane, thank you so much with your leadership. We're really just fortunate to have the center in Pennsylvania serving our #1 commodity group, and I think you, and it's been touched on before, the difficult in quantifying, sequestration of greenhouse gases. Bottom line is, we know that we do, right? But it is different based on your commodity, based on the climate that you're in, the soil types that you have, and so it's going to be very challenging being able to do that to a significant degree. But I do know as a whole, we know when we're looking at the macro level, and this is what we should be very proud of in terms of American agriculture, it all falls under the researchers kind of put it under the title of natural land solutions. And the natural land solutions, and I think a lot of this research and documentation, probably not all of it, but a lot of it was put forward that I reference, came out from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate. And quite frankly, natural land solutions is their fancy way of saying agriculture, because it really is. It's crops, it's ranching, and it's forestry. And from a macro perspective, this is something I think we should take great pride in. And I know that there are many out there that when there's some the most extreme voices on the other side, which were the only ones at the table for a very long time. Shame on us for allowing that to happen, but that's not occurring now. We are the members you have here. You're the Ag Republicans in Washington. We're doing what our mothers told us not to do. We're not only at the table, our elbows are squarely on the table, and we're leaning in on this issue that this task force is addressing. The other side is not following the principles that I already laid out. I mean, their science is political science. They talk about this because they want to influence the next election, and they don't. And facts shouldn't get in the way with what they do. We're clearly focused on science, and the science from the source I referenced and others shows that annually we sequester 6.1 gigatons of carbon through agriculture in this country. Now, I don't know how big a gigaton is, but it sounds huge, right? If you dig a little deeper into the research, you'll find that it's 10.1% more than what we emit. So instead of being climate criminals, which many of those on the other side love to put a bullseye on the back of dairy farmers, right? And cattlemen.
And almond guys.
And almond guys. Yeah, that's right. I'm expecting to get a bag of almonds in my office next week now, with directions on how to milk them, where to squeeze.
Video.
Yeah, a video. Yeah, an instructional video. But the fact is, you all are climate heroes. I mean, you're doing more for a healthier climate or environment, at the same time helping with a healthier economy. And I'm not saying that we're done at 6.1 gigatons. I actually think because of science and technology and innovation and an increase in efficiency, if we can get that to a 400% increase since the 1940s, we can do better than that, right? And so I know there's a push right now with climate smart, but the complexity of having a matrix where you could figure out, how many gigatons are being sequestered on this farm compared to your farm in Mercersburg. I mean, that sounds pretty challenging to me. But let's take credit and tell the story for what we know is true. And the fact is, you're already climate heroes that are not done improving, that we want to embrace this. And that's part of what our goal is, certainly with conservation with a purpose. So, Jane, thank you. Zachary, it's all yours.
Well, one of the neat things about being towards the end is I'm going to be echoing what a lot of folks have talked about. But I'm actually wearing several hats today. I'm here with the Franklin County Farm Bureau. I'm the president of our local Farm Bureau. I'm also a beef and crop farmer, and I have dairy running very, very thickly through my blood. I was just doing some calculating, probably 15 to 20,000 cows in Franklin County. I would have blood relations that are milking those cows. So ag's just something I've always been extremely passionate about. Several of the things that I've been involved with since being the county Farm Bureau president, there's been some positive movement on concern about conservation. Working with the Conservation District, Franklin County was one of 4 counties in Pennsylvania to be involved with a pilot program, basically making sure we're working with manure management and conservation. The biggest thing that we were really seeing and having conversations with the with folks in the Conservation District was we're trying to clean up and do our part, but there's a computer model that everything's based off of, and there is no ideology of how many acres are cover cropped or how many acres are double cropped. You know, we pull a lot of carbon out, and whenever you're pulling 2 crops off the same acre, you're pulling more and more carbon out of the atmosphere because plants need carbon dioxide.
That's right.
Same deal. My farm is actually along a creek that I have to be very conscientious of making sure that creek doesn't, and manure that's spread doesn't go down to the Chesapeake Bay. I have significant forestry and riparian buffer. Again, there's not, that computer model spits out numbers, but there's just, it's just so hard to actually figure what are we actually doing. So I'm also a dairy nutritionist, so we're constantly working on how can we be more efficient. Obviously, nitrogen utilization is one of the biggest things we're looking at, and how sometimes we're driven by commodities because we're businesses, and the ideal commodity may emit a little bit more nitrogen, but at the end of the day, are we trying to be as efficient as possible, but we still have to be able to afford feeding our cows. And any nutritionist who's worth their salt would say, number 1, feed a healthy cow. Number 2, let's do it as economically as possible. And sometimes economics and precision feeding can be challenging. So, yeah.
Very good, Zach. Thank you. Mike, it's all your,
All right.
the barn is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm Mike John with Maryland, Virginia Milk Producers. My team and I oversee all the raw milk produced by our 950 dairymen from Pennsylvania to South Carolina. We take that raw milk off of their farms and we move it mostly to our 5 plants internally. But we also have what we call third-party customers where we move that milk to. And so my team logistically moves about 140 loads of milk a day. And just to give you, I heard a lot of discussion about natural resources. So to give you a kind of a flavor, because I get to look at all the numbers and get to report to David Poole's on our board, so I get to report the numbers every month to David. I've seen just an energy cost to our dairymen because we oversee the hauling of that milk and then we pay the haulers to move that milk. We've seen the cost of that milk go up $650,000 a month just with the cost increase in energy costs. So
How many truckloads?
it's about 130 loads, 130, 140 loads a day.
650.
So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 35 cents a hundredweight is what we've seen the cost of fuel go up to our dairymen internally. And so obviously I think there has to be a balance between maybe what our practices are today and what our practices need to be in the future, and how do we do that economically, I guess is what I'm saying. And how do we make that happen so that we don't disadvantage a group. Right now, the milk prices that they're enjoying higher milk prices than probably we've seen in a long time. But we know that what goes up comes down. Dairymen are probably some of the most efficient producers, and they'll respond to higher prices over time. And so the real concern is the energy costs and other costs on the other side of it. So I guess the other thing that I would say is again, I can't really add a whole lot to what Lindsey and Jenna said, but other than just say that this partnership has been a wonderful partnership with private and public. We've been able to thread the needle with our conservative friends. So we have, even though we have 950 producers, probably 600 of those are in Pennsylvania, and the most of them are in Lancaster. As you can guess, I mean, Lancaster County is the largest dairy county from Maine to Maryland, so it's a big producing dairy county, and it's filled with dairymen. So probably the average size farm in Lancaster County is 110 cows, maybe. But they've been here. I'm 60. They've been here since I was 10. So I mean, they're going to be here after another 60 years. And we work great with them. And I think these private and public partnerships, and if we can even have more opportunity to represent kind of our conservative friends, our conservative membership as a cooperative, we would love that opportunity with the funds to be able to do that and obviously be accountable and administer all that. But that's important to us. We've been able to accomplish a lot of the goals that our state has wanted us to accomplish by these partnerships, and we look to keep moving that forward. So thank you very much.
Mike, thank you. I thought I'd just skim over some of the solutions. Part of our final product with Commitment to America really is to, as I'd mentioned previously, is being prepared to govern. And we have more work to do, and your kind of input like today is an important part of that. The different things that you've expressed, you would identify some of the things that are working, some of the things you have concerns with, and we're going to take that all into consideration specifically with this task force. But we do have as we go, ultimately our goal is hopefully to be prepared to govern. So that means having legislative proposals that are well vetted and prepared. So I thought I'd just share with you just a few of those that have kind of emerged so far as a result of our work that we've done. We're far from being finished with this. This is I find this a very exciting process to be a part of. But let me hit on some of those. Just last week, we introduced, or 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, before the 4th, H.R. 8069, the Reducing Farm Input Costs and Barriers to Domestic Production Act. And that really started out actually on a Monday with a letter. Leader McCarthy, myself, there were 96 members that signed it total, that we sent to President Biden about 9 things that he could do that really don't require congressional approval. I wanted to send him an ink pen with the letter, because that's all we needed. The only tool. Staff said that was a bad idea, so we didn't do it. Because these are things that the Biden administration could reverse its regulatory barriers. Now, 2 days later, we introduced legislation, though, because I wasn't counting on even probably even getting a letter back. If I do, it'd be great. We get a response back from the letter. But we did introduce this legislation then on the Wednesday following that Monday. And really to reverse this regulatory barriers, and I think you're some of the stuff you're probably dealing with. It's the fertilizer issue. The issue when it comes to and John, Congressman Rose made reference to the Tier 3 security, the SEC requirement that would require all farmers, in addition to other businesses, to report if you deal with a publicly traded organization. And in the way I read it, it would go beyond publicly traded. You'd have to you'd have to report on your interactions with these folks as it relates to carbon emissions. Now, I don't know if a farmer in Pennsylvania would be able to cope with that, let alone around the country. So we addressed that in there. We addressed the need for listing potash and some other key minerals that get used in making fertilizer as critical minerals, so that we could expedite the mining, refining, and manufacturing of that. But a lot of different things like that. HR 2639 put forward by a great friend of agriculture. In fact, he's the only, he's a forester, professional forester. Who knew that Yale had a forestry program? I've since learned they've got a great program there, and Representative Westerman, the Trillion Tree Act, which forestry is an important part of those natural land solutions in terms of taking greenhouse gases out of the air, sequestration, and manufacturing topsoil. Doesn't get any better than that. And that's what we do with croplands. That's also what we do in pastures with livestock that stimulate that root growth. HR 2518, the Precise Act, which would help to make more affordable access to precision agriculture. You had talked about the no-till equipment that you have. There's amazing new advances in precision agriculture equipment, but it's very expensive. And we want to make sure that we try to make that affordable for farmers of all sizes. HR 2581 is a more recent one, the biochar innovations and opportunities for conservation, health, and advancement. HR 2777, advanced recycling, research, and development. One I introduced last week with Congressman Westerman, who's the ranking member of Natural Resources, and Congressman Lucas, former Ag Chairman and current ranking member on the Science Committee, and that is the Carbon Sequestration Collaboration Act, trying to obviously do work at enhancing carbon uptake and storage in agriculture soils. And then I'll just finish with the last one, Sustains Act. Sustains Act really is the flagship piece of legislation in the Agriculture Committee that Ag Republicans have put forward. And it speaks to all the programs that the RCPP, the EQIP, you go down the line, all the conservation programs. And what the Sustains Act would do would create a public-private partnership with USDA, within USDA, so that organizations like Microsoft, Apple, eBay, Amazon, whatever, those large corporations that right now are interested in buying carbon credits, this would create a public-private partnership that they could make a contribution to USDA. Those monies would be used to fund additional conservation programs, Farm Bill programs. It would be matched with Farm Bill dollars, and we'd be able to do more. To give you some example of need, in 2020, EQIP, we, at the end of the day, after we had funded and funded as much as we could with what we had, there were 80,000 applications left over that were not able to be funded. If we would just been able to fund just a fraction of those, how much more environmental and economic benefit could we have had? Now, the beauty of the Sustains Act is where the carbon credits really only benefit, from my experience, my observation, rather large landholders, huge acreage, and rather large corporations. The Sustains Act benefits everybody. Mom and pop, tractor supply store, local grocery store, hardware store, if they want to get their climate credentials to be able to put in their advertising that they are climate champions, put it on their letterhead, put it on their products, they could make a contribution, a scalable contribution to USDA to be able to achieve that. So those are just a handful of programs. I know we're a little over 7 o'clock at this point, and really appreciate everybody's patience. Once again, I'll apologize for us getting here late, but we're not in the majority. We get in the majority, we do come back, we'll be much more prompt. I promise you that. We have control over the schedule. And so, you know, I just, if there's any last comments, open it up for any last comments, directions that anyone might have of our stakeholders. No?
Thank you for supporting us.
No. Well,
Absolutely.
we're proud to do it, proud to be a part of this, the commitment to America, and quite frankly, the Energy, Climate, and Conservation Task Force that Leader McCarthy is assigned to us. So, from our host, any remarks, Clint?
No, I just thank you for coming and appreciate you taking the time to see what we have going on here and hearing out what we have and think about what we've done and utilize what you guys have been able to help provide us with.
Thank you, and thanks for your hospitality. Congressman Rose, any parting words?
Well, I just probably second what I've heard over and over again here, which is that, you know, you grow up on an 8th generation farm, you have a keen awareness of preserving the environment. And you get to see firsthand the mistakes that were made in the past and also the things that were done right. It really teaches you that if you want to continue to produce, you've got to preserve the environment.
All right, and the gentleman from California.
I just want to say thank you for having me. It really was a good experience to come and talk to you folks and learn a little bit about farming across the country from where I live. It's also funny to hear the stories of people talking about how long they've been on farms. Some of these people have been on their farms longer than we've been a state in California.
There, we got something over California. I like that.
But thanks again. I really enjoyed it.
With that, thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.